This thing was never in doubt for me, and imagine that, me actually preaching patience when it comes to anything in life, but I thought that this was always going to get worked out. It had to. Seahawks traded 2 first-round picks to get Jamal Adams. You trade 2 first-round picks, the odds of you letting that person walk are pretty low. Even if you're not necessarily going to get something substantial with a first-round pick, we overrate first-round picks. Most first-round picks don't end up being all-pros or pro bowlers. It's like, I think as far as that goes, 30 to 40% end up being pro bowlers, around 10% get to first-team all-pro. Some of these guys don't even make it through the entirety of their first contract with the team. They get traded. The 5th-year option doesn't get picked up. So those first-round picks can be overrated, but that was the price that the Seahawks had to give up to get Jamal Adams. And, yeah, they overpaid. They did. You can't deny that. And they probably are when it comes to this contract, giving him a little bit more than you would expect a safety that's not that good in coverage to get. But I don't really think he's a safety. We'll get to that, more on that in a moment, and why I feel like the way that the contract is structured, it does make sense, even if he is getting a whole lot of money. But this deal was never in doubt to me. He's still, Jamal Adams, I think, in the honeymoon phase being with the Seahawks. And Pete Carroll is the perfect kind of personality to have as a figurehead for this organization to make sure that things don't get too heated or exasperated, as Mike Florio painted the picture. Pete Carroll said, from the moment we traded Adams, it was a plan to get this contract extension done.
I think this is really significant in that the statement that we made a long time ago when John sought out making contact and going after him was a big commitment then. We did a big commitment in picks and all of that. But the thing I really like about this now that it comes through and we get to this point is this was the plan the whole time, was to go after a great football player, get him in the program, pay what you got to pay to get it done in terms of draft picks, and then knowing that we were going to redo a contract. It took a while to get it done, but, it's over now.
Pete Carroll liked him. John Schneider found a way to get him. Now he's in the fold, and things I don't think were as contentious as they were portrayed to be. I think wishfully by those who are in the New York media, specifically those on the Jets beat. I think a lot of people who don't like the Seahawks also sort of look at it in that same light. And, of course, we saw it from some websites like Pro Football Talk, amongst others, who seem to be pushing this idea that things were getting to a point of no return, even though we had almost a month until the start of the regular season. Jamal Adams was asked if he would have potentially missed games this year, and here's what he had to say to that.
Man, hell no, man. I'm not Booba the Fool, man. I wasn't not going to take the contract, man, so no. Where I'm from, man, we're definitely taking that, man. Mom called. She called twice. And when Mom called and she told me that I needed to take the contract, it was a no-brainer, so Mama knows best.
Adams is an enthusiastic person to a point where sometimes you're like, whoa, relax. But that's his actual personality. He has been portrayed by some as a diva. He has been portrayed by some as a malcontent. Some have described him a cancer based off of the way that he operated in New York. Long story as to why things unfolded the way that they did in New York. But whatever the case, I think he's happy here. And I think that there was not a chance that he was going to miss games. And then you heard it there. His mom is the one who's stepping in and saying, Jamal, look at that money on the table. It's a lot. Are we really going to quibble over a couple extra $1 million, which seemed like they were thrown in at the very end? Because that contract, it's worth up to $72 million, which on an annual basis, Bobby Wagner in the midst of a 3-year, $54 million contract, on an annual basis would be, if Adams is able to get every single penny out of said contract, going to give him on an average the exact same $18 million a year that Bobby Wagner's getting. And that lends us into another conversation. I've said this before. Jamal Adams is the Seahawks' most valuable defensive player. Bobby Wagner is still a good player, but Adams is more valuable to this defense now. So it makes sense that he's being paid nearly as much as Bobby Wagner. And that his cap hit, interestingly, increases when Bobby Wagner's contract may be off the books, if you take a look at that deal that was put together. Why is that the case? it's not just the production that Jamal Adams had specifically as a pass rusher, a blitzer, his tackling ability too. It's also because of this extra quality that he brings that I don't know if Bobby Wagner quite has.
No, yeah, that was really kind of the theme for last year, that wherever you were playing, you had to generate your own support and your own juice and energy, and he's one of those guys. What I don't know that our fans realized last year is how he played hurt and played one-armed for a number of games when the shoulder was bad. And if you're at the stadium, you probably could see that more clearly, you know. But the toughness that he demonstrated and the grit and all the beautiful aspects that he put forth was. Our fans, I think, will come to understand that and appreciate him. I think he's really something.
Torn labrum, broken fingers, groin injury too. He played through a lot last year. 12 games, all things considered. He played in that playoff game against the Rams with a torn labrum. And you could see that torn labrum. The pass on the left sideline that he looked like he could perhaps have jumped. He was a little underneath it. The play downfield to Cooper Kupp, there's another play where he looked like he might have had an open field tackle. I still thought he had a pretty good game, all things considered, because you could tell his shoulder was messed up when he got injured in that game against the San Francisco 49ers at the end of the year. You saw him on the sideline, and I mean, he looked like someone had died. You know, he looked just so devastated by said injury. And it was because, look, he's going to make it to the playoffs for the first time, and he's not even going to be 100% in his first game. Adams has an energy to him that Bobby Wagner does not. And that's nothing against Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner is just not the kind of guy who is running around super energetic, getting everybody worked up, you know? I think Wagner's one of the more quiet leaders. He leads by example. And every now and then, maybe there's a moment in practice where he's calling guys out in I think, a well-deserved, a merited way. But that's how he operates. A lot more quiet, a lot more measured. Adams is different, and that juice that he brought to the table last year was a big part of why he was so valuable to the team. And, look, I don't know if I was going to go so far as to describe Jamal Adams the way that I believe he perhaps may have described himself in contract negotiations with the team. There is a point to be made that he's just different when it comes to defensive players across this league. Here's here's Pete. Anyway, Pete Carroll essentially had been told in contract negotiations that Jamal Adams is a unicorn of sorts. Here we go. Here it is.
Well, the term unicorn came up during the negotiations. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but he's a rare player, and he can do a lot of stuff. You know, we'll see how it all comes together.
So it's one of those things where you hear that, a little bit of a stretch, right? A unicorn. We found out today that I guess unicorns are the national animal of Scotland, which is also interesting because it's not real. But Adams is different. He is a safety that plays a lot like a linebacker. He is a super fast linebacker, undersized. Maybe there's a little bit more potential for injury there. I think he is worth the kind of money that someone like Bobby Wagner's getting paid or someone like Darius Leonard is getting paid. And if you actually compare the production of the three of those guys, I mean, it actually checks out. Now, maybe from a total tackle standpoint, okay, Darius Leonard, who had 132 in 14 games, Fred Warner, who had 125 in 16 games, Bobby Wagner, who had 138 in 16 games. Okay, maybe that gives those guys a leg up, but Jamal Adams in 12 games with 83 combined tackles had more tackles for a loss than Leonard, Warner, and Wagner. Had obviously 9.5 sacks, which is 3 times the sacks that those other guys had. He had 14 quarterback hits. Bobby Wagner's the second there. He had a forced fumble. It's not like the other guys were forcing a ton of fumbles out there or recovering a bunch of fumbles either. The other guys, the linebackers, a little bit better in pass coverage. More deflected passes, more interceptions. Not a lot of interceptions, though, between the 4 of those guys. Adams is comparable to them. So that's why that contract, I think, for Jamal Adams is worth it. And it makes sense because, as I laid out a little bit earlier, as Bobby Wagner's contract comes off the books, Adams' cap hit gets a little bit bigger. Assuming he is here for the entirety of said deal, that is something that I imagine is going to imply that and reflect that he is the centerpiece of Seattle's defense going forward.